All right. Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for being here with us today. I know that it's 5:30 on a Thursday, and we have a small election coming up, and there's lots of things people are doing. That was my terrible attempt at sarcasm. But we just really wanted to start off by saying thank you very much for joining us today. I know that we're going to have people that are going to be coming in a little bit later as well. But so we are the Refugee Alliance of Central Iowa. For anybody that is unaware, ROSI is really a collaborative. It's a network of stakeholders that are vested in seeing Central Iowa being as welcome a place possible and as supportive of a place as possible for refugees and immigrants and new Iowans. So we have a lot of different work groups. We have a advisory community made up of refugee community leaders. When we have 3 events every year, we help put on the World Refugee Day for Central Iowa, Refugee Day on the Hill, and then also the summit. And so if you've been at the summit in the past, in years past, it's typically a 1-day or multi-day in-person event. That's just an amazing resource and wealth of information geared towards educators and health providers, mental health providers, and people involved with the court system and case managers, and just really anybody that is dedicated or vested in working with refugee individuals or families. But this year with COVID, we are offering all of this 100% virtually. So this will be available on the ROSI website afterwards as well, just in case anybody wants to go back and look at notes or connect better with our speakers today. So today's topic really is going to be with supporting our refugee students and their families to withstand their learning during this pandemic. And as noted in that webinar description, it's been a very tough time for our refugee communities. There's a lot of different reasonings that can go into that, but we have Chris Albers, who's a teacher with Monroe Elementary, Jillea Buseo, who's an ELL instructor with Meredith Middle School, and Janiece Ochoa, that is a teacher with Hoover High School. And then Vinh, Nguyen, who is our ELL accountability and support specialist with DMPS, that are going to be with us tonight to be able to just hopefully give us all some additional tools and resources and share some of their experiences in helping to support our refugee communities. And for anyone that doesn't know me, I'm Stephanie Morris, and I'm the director of ROSI. And then also on the call today is Valerie Bouvat de Virginie, and she is ROSI's AmeriCorps Vista as well. And if you ever have any questions after this event, or if there's ever anything that we can do to help connect you with information or speakers from today, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. And then Vinh, I'll turn it over to you, and I'll shut off my video so people can focus on you instead. And I will be back on for questions afterwards.
I'm going to try to, Stephanie, it said host disabled participants share.
I'll get that on.
Okay. Well, good evening. Thank you so much for being here with us. I mean, I know in the house it's going to be a small number of people, but this is very critical topic that you have 3 excellent people with you. These are the people that have tremendous respect from me as a longtime educator myself, but I have a lot of respect for these 3 people. That's why I have decided to invite them to come on board with us for this particular time. As I'm waiting for the screen to be shared with me, I'm gonna go ahead and ask Mrs. Albers to introduce herself.
Well, hi, I'm Chris Albers, and I'm very honored to be here. Working with refugees is one of the great honors of my life. I'm an ELL teacher at Monroe Elementary, as Stephanie said, and that's in Des Moines.
Jillea, would you please?
Hi, I'm Jillea Buseo, and I also am very privileged to be here. And I don't know, it's pretty humbling to be talking about refugees right now. I don't know that I feel very expert about any of this right now, so we're all kind of learning as we go along. I teach at Meredith Middle School, which is also in the northwest part of Des Moines. So Monroe feeds into Meredith.
Last but not least, I'm going to invite Mrs. Ochoa, a longtime friend of mine.
Good evening. Yes, Vinh and I, we've known each other very long time. We're getting old together. I have 28 years of teaching experience at Hoover High School. Vinh was there with me for some of those. I love working with ELL students and their families. It's been something I've been very passionate about for many years. And this has been an interesting and trying time for us, but as we always do with our refugee students, we do the best we can to help educate them and work with their families as best we can. So just happy to be here tonight.
Can you see my screen right now?
Yes.
Okay. So we are extremely happy to be invited by RASI to participate in this critical conversation. I know for time you think why so late? Shouldn't we do this like 2 weeks ago or 2 months ago when we are in the midstream of pandemic? But never too late for anything, and we think it's still very critical for us to help parents to really adjust their schedule, adjust their workforce, adjust many things to support their children, especially the refugee children. Many of our family have multiple students in the same family, so they are juggled with the schedule and so on. So the goal for the day is to really give refugee parents some really good tip to be able to help their own children in the next many weeks, many months, who knows when the pandemic is over. So here's are the 10 most tips that I did research, and I'm going to ask our teacher to jump on. But Chris, first, would you talk about the elementary school and how it is right now, the situation that we have?
Okay, so until about a week and a half ago, we were 100% virtual. Last week, starting on Monday, we transitioned to a hybrid model. And what that means is we have students divided into 2 cohorts. So there's cohort A, who come on Mondays and Tuesdays in person in the school. And then there's cohort B, who comes on Thursday and Friday in person in the school. And then they alternate Wednesdays. When the students are not in school, they are to be doing online learning at home, but with very minimal teacher support. Because the classroom teachers are teaching the kids who are there in person. Then we also do have at Monroe, about a third of our students, their families chose 100% virtual. In the 100% virtual cohorts, those teachers are teaching live virtually all 5 days of the week. So what I am doing is, for my role as an ELL teacher, I work with 4th and 5th graders. I am juggling seeing kids in person, and I have to go in, and because of COVID-19 protocols, I can't pull kids into groups. I have to go into the classrooms for very brief times. So I'm juggling checking in on the kids in person, and then also trying to check in with kids virtually. I also have set up groups for my most needy students, generally at an emerging level, many of them who are refugees. And so I have virtual groups that I've set up for them. And I also check in with them when they're in the school. Vinh, is there anything else specifically you want me to say right now?
So particularly, can you share with us how big of a group as a classroom right now, and the process, you know, sanitize? I mean, I went into the school and it operated very different than the normal time that we have.
So the class, so any cohort for any given teacher is maybe anywhere from 8 students to about 14 students. And then with some students being absent, like I was in a classroom on Wednesday where there were only 4 students there with a teacher, even though I do think the class maybe has a few more students who are absent. There's just a lot of protocols with social distancing. One rule is that we're wearing masks 100% of the time. I'm actually breaking the rules a little bit right now. We had conferences. I share a room with 2 other ELL teachers. And so we're really supposed to be wearing masks if anybody else is in the room. But rest assured, my colleagues are quite far from me. So, you know, when I'm meeting virtually with students, I'm having a mask on, which is very difficult, especially when I have beginner readers and students who have, you know, very limited English. Some of the safety protocols, there's quite a system for going to lunch. So, you know, the lunch time takes about 30 to 35 minutes, the whole process of cleaning off desks, getting washing up, going down to the cafeteria, getting a tray, taking it back to the classroom, eating, and then cleaning up afterwards. So it's quite a process. There's all kinds of protocols for when we have dismissal. So, you know, and using the restroom, everything takes a few extra steps and a few extra minutes to do. So even though class sizes are small, still everything just takes a lot of more extra time than it does under normal circumstances.
Thank you very much. Jillea, what about middle school? We just began, right, this week?
Yes, we just started on Monday. And so we had been all virtual up until Monday as well. I know there were some schools that were bringing in students that were able to provide transportation to the schools. There were a few here and there that were bringing in students, like Chris said, our emerging students, our newer students who need more support. I would say middle school looks slightly different than elementary in that we are doing, at least at Meredith, and I think it does depend a little bit on the school, but at Meredith, students are receiving synchronous learning 5 days a week, no matter if they are virtual or hybrid or which cohort they're in. So they are following a schedule just as close to like what we do in a school day, as far as like the different classes and things. And they have a teacher that leads the learning for each period. So there are 6 periods in middle school, and each teacher is teaching a classroom of students and teaching the classroom of virtual students at the same time, which has been big challenge this week for teachers to figure out how that all works and the technology and things like that to make sure that works. I feel pretty lucky, especially after listening to Chris tell a little bit about elementary. So the group of students I work with, which are the emerging, the beginning students, they are in a cohort by themselves at Meredith, and then we join virtually, but also I'm there to support them, like for their math and science classes. So they do like a pullout where I'm with them teaching them English, but it's not really pulled out because we stay in my classroom the whole time. And I have about 7 to 8 students in the classroom at a time that are all emerging level students.
So Jillea, let me make sure that our audience understand. So if we think we have newly arrived students who are emerging language proficiency, they may not even have any language proficiency. Our teacher and family can advocate for them to attend school 5 days a week if they are able to come up with some sort of transportation.
I think it depends on the school. Like, so for the numbers for my school, like they aren't, so when I say 5 days a week, I'm saying they're not necessarily at school 5 days a week. So I have the 2 cohorts like Chris talked about. So we have a Monday, Tuesday cohort and a Thursday, Friday cohort. But the difference is that when for example, today, our Thursday, Friday cohort was the first day they came. The Monday, Tuesday students were on the call on Teams at the same time as I was delivering instruction. So as I was teaching my students I had in front of me, I was also teaching the students that I have at home. And so there's a little less of the individualized, or not individualized, but individual work or self-led work, I would say. We're trying to give them as much support as we can.
Well, thank you.
Which is still not ideal.
Not ideal.
We've all learned how to share our screen. I think that's one of the main skills that we have taught students how to do is share their screen so that we can troubleshoot things at home. So I'm trying to think what else. I don't know. It's going to be different. And right now at our building, so for the non-emerging students, I would say there's a good number of refugee students who are also virtual 100%, but like I said, they are still mixed in with the hybrid students as far as like the teaching is all synchronous through the computer and the teachers managing both. So I think that's the biggest hurdle, is the teacher managing the students in the classroom and the students at home at the same time, or as close to the same time as possible.
I see. Well, since elementary school and middle school started their hybrid learning, we have not started the high school level yet. So I'm going to ask Janiece Ochoa to come on board to share with us a little bit about how high school is going to be taking place with their hybrid learning. Janiece?
Sorry, I had to unmute myself. So we are finishing up our first term. This school year, we went from our 2-semester format to a 4-term format. So each term is 9 weeks. So we covered a full semester worth of course material in 9 weeks. The first term will be ending on November 9th, and it was 100% virtual for all students. Term 2, we will be going to the hybrid model, or if families chose to stay virtual, then that was a second option. So if those students chose to stay virtual, which I believe was around 4,000 students district-wide that chose to stay virtual, they are actually going to be taught through the virtual academy. So teachers will be shifting from maybe being full-time at Hoover to being a full-time teacher for virtual academy, and will teach those students online. So they will be separate from the home schools. They will not be connected to any teachers at their home schools for term 2. So the students who are choosing to stay and do the hybrid, they are split into 2 cohorts. Cohort A will be the Monday, Tuesday. Cohort B is the Thursday, Friday. And then they will alternate every other Wednesday. So Cohort A will start off with Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And then the next week it will be this Cohort B that will be the Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So they will alternate their Wednesdays. Listening to Jillea explain and Christine about how they handle students at the high school level, it's different because the students have to actually be scheduled into a class with their ELL teachers. So they do actually have a separate scheduled class with us. And since they're divided into cohorts, it will take the number of students down to around 15 students, more or less, in that area that will be in our classrooms with us on a given day. So it may be maybe between 15, no more than 20 students. But 15 right now is the goal to have in our classrooms with us. It has been given to the teachers to choose which style of teaching they want to do. They can teach like Jillea is doing, both virtually and the students in their classroom together at the same time, or teachers can just teach the students that are in their room, give them the direct instruction, and then the students that are in the other cohort would be at home doing learning independently with work that the teacher has provided for them. So it is, it could be a combination of those two methods. So it's been left up to the teachers to decide how they want to do their instructing. Most teachers that I know of are planning to use Canvas in some way to continue that instruction. And I think are going to use a combination of both of those teaching methods. So,
Janiece, can you elaborate a little bit about Canvas? Because the audience may not know what Canvas is.
Sure. Canvas is the online program that we use to provide instruction. A lot of colleges and universities have been using Canvas for many years. And it's the format that our district has chosen also to use. It's been around for a few years, but until this past year, wasn't necessarily used wide scale until we had to use it. So it's a program that kids will get in. It has a full course. They can open the course. Initially, it's set up so that it's an independent thing that students can go in and independently complete the course on their own. That's the way it was in the past, but obviously now we're not using it in that same way. It's more of the teachers leading the students through the courses now, and being there more supportive throughout their learning. Okay. So it isn't just the students getting on by themselves, doing the work and completing the work.
Thank you. Here's a question that I want to pose to all three of you. Whoever want to chime in the answer, please do. There is a huge concern, the learning gap, especially the learning gap will be widened among the refugee students. So what is the one quick advice that you can give to a parent or community when we are dealing with the pandemic? So I'm talking about the learning gap, the language acquisition gap, because they are not having enough time to really interact with English speaker, right? They don't have enough time in person to connect with you as you wish them to. We used to have that before the pandemic. So with that concern, what is one of the quick things that you can recommend right now for parent or community to, hey, let's do this?
I would say the first thing is to participate in the time that you do have, because I would say a large percentage of my students right now, when they're at home, aren't participating. They aren't practicing that speaking. And I will say that I think their writing skills are improving more right now, which is kind of cool, because writing has been like a struggle, but I think the speaking skills have not improved at all. So I think to me, like, turning on your microphone and taking a chance to talk, and even if you don't have your face on there, like, this is the time that you could talk and you don't have to show your face. You can practice. So I would say just take advantage of the time that you are on the call, and like, don't be shy. Like just take a step and give it a try. Because I would say, to me, that's the part that's scariest to me, is the students that are sitting there, that in the classroom can kind of, we can coax them to say something because we're right there and we can just keep encouraging them. But virtually on the computer, if they're at home and they're not responding to us, then we don't know if it's because they don't understand, or if it's because their computer doesn't work, or there's so many possibilities. So it's important that if they are at home and everything does work, to really take advantage of that and answer the questions or repeat or do whatever the teacher is trying to, and ask a question if they don't know. Like, ask the questions, or reach out to their if they have a friend or a translator or somebody that can reach out if they are having the technical problems too.
So I was going to say something similar. The first step is that they need to follow the schedule and be online when they're supposed to be online, and be at school when they're supposed to be at school. Because that's been, for some students, that's been hard to get them to follow a schedule. And then I agree with what Jillea is saying, that once they are on, is to try to participate as much as possible. Now, I will say, along with writing, I think some students are really getting a lot of good practice with listening too. And when you think about authentic talk, just working through the technology problems, working through the different discussions and things. The students who are engaged are getting a lot of good listening and speaking practice. But of course, if you're not engaged, then you're not getting that practice.
And I would just agree. I agree with both of them, especially at the high school level. One thing that we've really tried to get out to the kids is that, this is a different type of learning than you've ever had to do before. And you are going to be more responsible than ever for your own learning. And that means you're going to have to be scheduled. You're going to have to be disciplined and figure out a routine. And there's a lot of students when they're in class and they do turn on their microphones, there's a lot of noise in the background, a lot of distractions going on, TV's blaring really loud, young kids running around. So it's very easy to get distracted. Fire alarms going, or not alarms, but smoke detectors going off. We need to do a mini lesson on how to change batteries. So
okay.
It's staying focused, and I agree with Jillea 100%. Be engaged in your learning, and take the responsibility for your learning. It's huge, very huge right now.
Well, and I would just add, with what Janiece is saying too, that would be another piece of advice I'd give parents, because a lot of the homes, there is a lot going on. There's a lot of people there. And I understand that they can't help that, but helping their student maybe find a quieter place where the internet connection is good and strong would be helpful to them. So that would be another piece of advice.
Okay, that take us to tip number 1. Yes,
can
Jillea.
I say something, Vinh,
Sure.
really quickly too? I also want to just say, I don't want to discount the learning that's going on with the actual technology, and kind of like, like there is a gap maybe with the English, but like Chris and Janiece said, with the authentic part of the technology, like there's stuff that they're learning how to do that will be invaluable, like that are 21st century skills that they need to learn anyway. And at school, it's hard to sometimes get people to learn those, but right now, like you have to. And so I think that to say, you know, I've kind of encouraged myself a little bit by saying, you know, we're not learning as much English as we maybe normally would, but we have learned so many other things that are not directly English. There's so much learning going on, and it may not be the English that we want, but it is learning nonetheless.
Absolutely. So tip number one that we have for parents and the community member is, you know, I know the quarter that our family live in a 2-bedroom apartments and 5-6 students and parents and so on. But our advice is, as you heard from our expert here, to create the best possible learning space. You know, so find a space in the kitchens, in the living rooms, or wherever that is. Create that into a learning space for your children. That is tip number one. Tip number two, you have heard from them too. Knowing the schedule of your children learning schedule. Parent,
And
even though you say, hey, I don't speak English and I don't know what the schedule look like, but yet you get to learn their schedule. And my wonderful friend, Chris Albert, this is what she created for her student. Chris, can you talk a little bit the schedule that you visually created for parents to understand?
Yeah, but I also, and I think this is what Jillea was going to say, is we're not seeing your slides,
Oh,
like they're not progressing.
oh,
But actually, I actually pulled up, so I created for my, at least my emerging level students, a schedule. I'm just going to kind of hold it up to the camera. I tried to, this is a weekly schedule for them. So the days, you know, of course, they're at school, there's not much there. But then for the days they're home, to at least give them some things that they can do independently each time. So for instance, I have my group time with them. They have a program called Imagine Learning. There's some programs they can use to read, and then their teachers give them some things, and I hopefully am giving them some scaffolds with those so they can do those independently. I also took Allison Holman, who's another teacher in our district, made a schedule to help families just keep, oh, there it is, keep track of when we have school and when we don't. And so I think that's incredibly helpful. So I know a lot of classroom teachers at my school have handed those out to all teachers, or I mean to all families, because it's really confusing, quite frankly, especially the Wednesdays.
We've borrowed it at the middle school level. It got to
good.
us, and I just had to change the time at school. But yes, it has been very valuable. We've passed it out all week this week. So thank you.
Great. I'm gonna copy this. I'm gonna send the slide to Stephanie. She's gonna put on the resources page for RASI so parent can access it or community member can access it. And you see, even though with limit language proficiency, parents still can access. Hey, this is the time that you need to go to school. And this is the time that you need to be on screen. We have different programs for your child to access. We have Canvas for high school student and different places that they can do. Tip number 3 is, as you heard from teacher, ETAP is a routine. It is not a vacation. You know, you have to make sure your children understand, hey, it's not a break time from learning. Learning taking place 24/7 for us in Des Moines, you know, even myself. So time to learn.
I would like to add to this one, because this was an issue with the high school students. And it's going to be the same for, because our term, we're going to do this second semester as well. We're going to have terms. So each class is going to last 90 to 95 minutes. So the teachers may only be giving instruction for part of that time, maybe for 30 minutes, maybe for 45 minutes or 50 minutes. But the remainder of that time, students still need to be working and completing their assignments. And a lot of students would log in for the Teams meetings for 30 minutes, 45 minutes, and then they're thinking, well, I did class today, I'm done. And they're not completing the work. So many of them are struggling and not doing well. Their grades are not great because they haven't actually put the time in to complete the assignments. And so that's huge, is you know, the team's time is only part of the instruction, and the rest of the time, and if they can't do it right at that moment, then they need to find time to do it later in the evening or on the weekends. They need to find a time to get that work completed.
Okay.
And I would say at the middle school level, it's the same as we've seen the same pattern where students are logging on, but not completing the work. Like they're, you know, they're turning on the computer and they're saying, okay, I'm here. And then we don't know like what's going on. Like I said earlier, like I'm not sure if it's because you don't understand what to do, or if it's because you're, you know, watching your brother or sister, or if you're playing a game or doing TikTok. I don't know what the, I'm not sure which thing you're doing. One thing too, and I'm not sure if this is later on, Vinh, or not in your tips, but when Janiece was talking about going back and doing it at their own time, like at least at the middle school level, and I'm thinking all of the high school and elementary Teams meetings are recorded. And so you can go back and rewatch it. So even, I think that's that's an asset that students haven't had a chance to do before. Like you can listen to a teacher like read a story, like if they read it out loud, well, you can have them do it again. You can watch it later, or you can watch the instruction again. So that's just another, one of those things that's kind of different, but you know, an asset in this time.
So that take me tip number 4, limit the distraction. You heard from them, you know, when the team is on, the baby cry is okay because they had a babysit their brother and sister, but they can actually do that along with learning, but not TV blasting in the back or music or what different is. So the routine that we were talking about is, hey, a certain time during the day, the TV had to be off because your siblings, they are learning in this class and that class, for example. No visitor from the apartment neighbor or so on during that time. So that time had to be treated as the study time or learning time. So distraction had to be off limit so students can focus in learning. And you see, you heard from them, when they focus in learning, they actually doing way better in their English proficiency. Tip number 5 is what I have here. If you are able to establish the routine for your children, then you need to also maintain some sort of a break in between. You know, there are so many hours that they can stay on the screen. So they need to take a break, they need to have snack, they need to have recess, stretch, or whatever that they need to do to really bring their mind back toward the next learning. Because the learning is not going to take in only 20 minutes or 45 minutes. It's a whole day learning as they go to school. Here is what Jillea and Chris were talking about. Their conversational skill actually went up, their writing actually went up. So allow them time to interact with friends, with their teacher through team. In Des Moines, all students have team, I believe. Is that true? Yeah. So they can actually text, or they can chat with their friend or their teacher or whoever that is to practice their English language skill. Anything that you want to jump in on tip 7?
And we've seen students doing that, because when at the end of class and the meetings, you know, class is over, we're done, teachers are like, okay, bye. The students will stay on and keep talking to each other. Yeah. So that's okay. And that's a good way to practice their English. So, and they miss each other. That's
right. Yeah. their mental health, that is very important for them this time of year. I mean, even adult, we have a tough time to deal with, being surrounded by, I'm working in a closet right now, for example. It is very tough. So we need some time to really have communication with somebody else. So I encourage parents to say, hey, there's time that they need to text their friend, get on the computer and team with teacher or whatever, whoever that is, encourage them to do so to practice their English skill.
I would say that's good. I had a student very early on, back in April or May, when we first turned on or handed out the computers. And about that first week, I was getting interrupted about 10:30 or 11 o'clock at night by a call from a student who was trying to contact another student, and then they'd already figured out how to share their screen to play Minecraft together.
Oh,
And so I was like, well, that's great, but let's just not interrupt Mrs. Buseo when we're trying to do this. And then I would also say too, on that is like the time and place, like doing the chatting, like Janiece said, after the class. At the middle school level, we've had a little bit of issue with students doing the chatting like during class, just like passing notes kind of would be like the old school, but now it's like chatting during class or, trying to do that. So I think encouraging them to do it, but at the right time, like make sure they're doing it like either with their classmates during class time appropriately, or waiting till after school to do it.
Chris? No. This,
I agree with everything that everybody said.
okay. Tip number 8 is, this is such a vulnerable time. So, but this is the best time, to be honest with you. I feel this is the best time for parents to build relationship with their children. Parent, I advise you to visit with your child every single day. In the morning, if you're at home, at night, if you get off from work, do not feel that you have limited in English proficiency and then you are not able to communicate with your child. They need you. They really need you. They need your encouragement. They need your positive input. You always have to stay positive with them. I know sometimes it is so difficult at work, so difficult out there, but as a parent, you have to stay positive for your children, because your children are going through a very difficult time themselves. They miss their friend, they miss the communication with teacher, they miss so many things, go to the ballpark or whatever that is, the activity that they was doing. They miss a lot of stuff. So as parent, I strongly encourage you to visit with your child or your children every night. If you have a lot, 4 or 5 children in the family, just have them really sit around the table and talk about the day. What are you learning? How do you manage your computer? How do you navigate it throughout the day? What's interesting about the class that you have this morning with Mrs. Ochoa or Mrs. Albers? Things like that is really helpful for your child to be positive and encourage them to do well.
Yeah.
There's
Can I
Yes.
take that one step further, Vinh, and even
Go ahead.
have your children like have them actually show you the work that they're doing. And that this is for 2 reasons. One, because it helps you to understand what they're learning and how they're learning it, but it's also progress monitoring. You're monitoring if they are actually doing the work and completing their work. This has been another issue again at the high school, because kids are on their computers, they're looking at the computer, the parents think, oh, he's doing it, he's doing his work. Well, no, they're not doing anything. And obviously we have parents who have to work during the day and their kids are home by themselves, and the parents think they're on and doing their work, and they come home and how was school? Oh, fine. And find out later when teachers have to call and say, your son or daughter has not submitted any work. They've done nothing. So having your kids, show you the work that they're doing is going to help those two things. It's going to help you understand what they're doing, and it's also going to help you to monitor that they're getting the work done. You may
Chris,
not,
you're
they may
about
not
to say something.
understand the work, but at least they can see that their kids are doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. And then the other thing I was going to add is I think another benefit to really building that relationship with your children is speaking in the home language. And because I think it's important for students to maintain that home language and to speak to people in their home language, their families, their friends, as well as practicing English. So it's good to have conversations in both.
Especially the academic language, I think, learning about, once you get to middle school and high school, for some of our students who maybe have been here a longer time might not know how to explain some of this to, their families in their home language. And so I think they're, again, showing the Canvas page or watching the video, like I said, watching the Teams video again of seeing it, showing like what you've done. And I will say too, my students who I feel like are the most engaged are ones where I can tell the family is like they're making sure that their student is right there. And I know that not all families have that option. So I know that that's not available for everyone, but I do know that I've had some students who I feel like are really engaged by having like their older brother or their whoever like telling them, make sure you're doing this, and you can hear them in the background. And I will say, I'm not sure if it's on, and we only have one more tip left, but I would also say, make sure that your students doing their own work. Because I have seen some students where there's an older brother or an older sister that's trying to help their student by doing it for them because they know how to do it, but that really doesn't help the student learn how to do it themselves. It's still just someone else doing it. So it's not just getting the work done. It's not just completing the work, but showing us what you really know. And so doing that. And I will say both tip 7 and 8, as far as like family connecting with your child. I think that, being positive with them and showing them, just telling them, just reaffirming like you're learning a lot, and, just one thing that you've learned, or what can you tell me that you've learned today? I think that's just great.
Yeah. And all the learning sessions are being recorded. So, if mom and dad just take about 5 minutes, during their day, or 10 minutes or so, just say, hey, what did you learn? Can you go back to that and show dad or mom what you have learned for the day? I think it's critical. So here is the wonderful thing about that is parents also have a chance to learn with their children. They learn English along with that. That's just a wonderful opportunity for them. But I do agree with Chris that home language is so critical. We need to maintain it. So therefore, with the parent involvement with their children learning, parents actually embrace a growth mindset for their children. Always encourage their children that, hey, you can do this. This task is difficult, but you can pursue it. It's worth to get it done. Not having somebody else doing their work and so on. One last tip that I have is this. Because the communities, we are together, right? We work together. We have such an ethnic community in Des Moines area. So keep in touch with other parents. Call the other parent, hey, what's your children learning for the day or the week? What did they do? How can you help them? Can you tell me some tips? Call teachers, call their school. I mean, it really is the teacher out there to support them. Someday, I don't know, can parents get on team to talk to you at all? Can they?
I've talked to parents like through Teams.
Okay.
Yeah. Like
so
when
they
they've
have
been in
access,
class.
so they can talk to you on team, right? Yeah. So
through the kids, through the child's.
I was going to say through this.
Through the child. Yeah.
Child's computer.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is a
But-
way to from their phones that they can call in. I'm not sure how to do it, but our BFLs know how to do it because we've done it for some parent-teacher conferences where the parents were on their lunch break or whatever. So they were able to call in from their phone and through Teams.
Okay.
I don't know how to do it, but the BFLs did. So
We certainly can figure it out
so
and,
they'll know
give a
everything.
tip. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And especially in Des Moines Public School, we have a group of people working for Des Moines School we call bilingual family liaison. So therefore, as a community member, you need to know who they are. Parents need to know who they are. You know, they can call them or leave message for them to connect with teacher and school. And with that access, they are able to really communicate. It's much better than before too. I mean, before was much harder, but with true team, their children access and phone call, FaceTime, I think we are able to do so. So those are the 10 tips that that we have for you. It's time for us to open any questions if you have for us.
And if anybody has questions that they're unable to unmute for, you can always type into the chat too. Okay, all right. Well, if anybody thinks of questions at 2 a.m. like I do, you are always more than welcome to reach out to either Valerie or myself. If you don't have email addresses for any of our speakers today and are wanting to connect with them in specific. And then in addition, this webinar will be posted onto the Rossi Summit webpage, and we can definitely include contact information there as well.
Stephanie, I'm going to build on the contact information on my PowerPoint. So I'm going to share that PowerPoint so they can connect with these wonderful teachers. I know they work for certain school, but I'm telling you, I believe, I'm not going to talk on their behalf, but I think they are able to help any parent anywhere else.
Yeah, I've been sitting here taking, I have a kindergartner. This is our first year. And so it's interesting to navigate, but I've been sitting here taking notes for us to do at home too.
Yeah, yeah.
All right. Well, thank you to our presenters and panelists so much for your time tonight. Thank you for everybody for being here. We really appreciate your time, your expertise, your knowledge, and sharing your years of experience with us. And then, yeah, if people have questions or are wanting to connect later, don't hesitate to reach out. We're always helpful or always happy to help do that. And yeah, enjoy the rest of your evening and thank you all again.
And I encourage you to connect with one of our four of us. Together, we have more than 100 years of experience. It's incredible. A little bit more than almost 120 years, almost. So we have vast of experience in many things, and not that I tooted their horn, but I'm telling you, I know these three people. They are such a dedicated teacher with refugee population here in Des Moines area in central Iowa. My hat out to these three. It's always a great respect. So thank you all three of you for joining me on this particular night. Thank you.
Well, thank you for inviting me. It was my pleasure.
Yeah, thank you, Vinh. None of us hold a candle to you, though.
I would agree with that.
I have it right here. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.